Thank you for joining us, everyone. This is Jacob Dietrich with Mind, Body, and Sound is the name of my new company, and I'm here with Christopher Pridham. He's a certified astrologer, and he also has a degree, master's in, am I right, in religious studies, Christianity. Yeah, and he's going to talk about what factors to look for in your astrological chart or birth chart in regards to being a shaman, if that is a path for you or not. And you can take it away, Christopher, and thanks for being here.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I'm hoping this is a lot of interaction here too. So,
yeah.
You know, with questions and digging down, because otherwise I'm just going to go and I get like lost. So,
yeah, I'll try to ask some questions.
Yeah, so you can steer me just fine. All right.
Okay.
So, I mean, and the idea of a shaman, I mean, that's an interesting thought, you know, because you can look at certain aspects that they'll deal with healing and different things. But what I wanted to do, or what I ended up doing, was I went and looked at an actual chart of a shaman that I know, he's a Peruvian shaman. Does, okay, so that's what he's about is, I mean, since he was a child, you know, it's what his father is, and it's what his grand.
All right, I'm sorry about all that. Your father was a child, or he was a shaman. Sorry. Oh, what happened? I can't.
These 3 times, well, actually 4 times, personally. And so been a part of his ministry and you know, what he does as far as teaching. So I thought, you know, I'd like to actually look at a real shaman, someone who I know is an actual shaman, and look at his chart and see what's there as well. So I'm going to be doing that, along with just dealing with some basic aspects in shamanism and where you would see that in the chart. So again, for me, any questions that anybody has along the way, ask. Because what you're going to be looking at, first off, generally when you deal with shamanism, you're going to be looking at a lot of the deeper type aspects, which would be Scorpio, 8th house, and Pluto. Those are like first things that I'm going to look at. The reason being is in shamanism, you're wanting to go to a certain depth in things. This is not really a shallow type of work, as it were. It wants to go do very deep healings. It's not simply looking at, you know, healing a cold. You know, it's like, what is the cause of the cold? What is the cause of this disease? What is the cause? And so in a lot of times in shamanism, they'll tend to go much deeper into these matters. So that's why you want to pick up with Scorpio and the 8th house and Pluto, because these are all tied together. It is Pluto that rules Scorpio and the 8th house. So these again are an energy that is all tied together, and it tends to be this idea of a feminine energy as well. So it's wanting to go deep, it's wanting to go inward is what it's wanting to do. All right, so that's one of the things that you look for kind of straight off, is how a person's tied to Pluto. Is that strong in their chart? One thing you would look for there is, again, Pluto in the 8th house, Pluto in the 1st house, Pluto in the 6th house. Those would be major like placements for a Pluto placement. Looking at a shaman would be one of those. And the reason being, Pluto in the 1st house makes a person very Plutonian. It makes them with a strong evolutionary drive, is what it does. So there's a natural propensity for going deep and not liking sort of shallow answers or shallow, they're not shallow people. Okay? They're wanting to go deep into things. In the 6th house, what you have going on is this is your work for the community, for the tribe, and this also kind of plays into health. You'll see a lot of times that 6th house issues deal with your health. So the idea of adding health to that Pluto aspect is seen there. And those are two very... The 8th house, again, is the idea of intimacy and transformation. So when you take this concept of transformation, or the manifestation of transformation, and then you have Pluto, you have an evolutionary transformation is what you have. And you will see the idea that shaman will work a lot in that area. So that's one of the aspects there for Pluto. Again, if you have let's say an 8th house sun, all right, 8th house sun is going to have a propensity for going into these deeper kind of works that have a strong tie to sort of pulling up the deep psyche. Okay, so dealing with going in and manifesting and bringing forth these things in the dark, the deep psyche that's there within every human being, in order to bring them to the light, to make them visible, so things can be healed, so things can be dealt with. All right, so that's a strong thing, and that's a strong placement. Is Sun, 8th house. Let's see. Another one you're going to look at, again, if you have, which we kind of touched on, Pluto 8th house is going to do the same thing. Mercury 8th house is also going to be pretty big, because then you're going to have that idea of the mental state and the mind wanting to probe deeper and go deeper. Okay? So you take, let's say, a Neptune and Mercury that would be conjunct in the 8th house. That would be pretty big. You know, this is a mind that is made to explore the unknown in great depth, is what you're doing. Okay? So sometimes you'll have house placements are going to be the big factor. Other times you could have sign placements. For example, Chiron. So Chiron in Pisces is a very, it's something for the healer. It's very shamanic in nature, all right? Because the Pisces is this collective. It is the idea of the wholeness that is. And with Chiron being the wounded healer, you take that wounded healer in the idea of the collectiveness, and this takes on that very strong shamanic tone of this all-inclusive, bringing everything and working with everything to find the answer, to find, in a sense, the healing that can be there. So that becomes a strong one. Also, the asteroid Pallas Athenia had strong placements of Pallas Athenia, let's say in the 1st house or the 8th house. This is about the healer, and it takes on that feminine sort of quality as the shaman does. And so it takes those attributes and wants to manifest them either in the 1st house, which is very sort of organically, naturally drawn, just spontaneously, and sort of in a pioneering type way. It can do that, or again in the 8th house, which is going to take it into depth. And you can see the idea of going into even depth psychology, which in a way the shaman does, but in a very sort of non-logical way is what's happening. It's going in a very natural way, and that's where that feminine nature can take it. So that's pretty strong there. Let's see. Looking at the shaman's chart, he had a Neptune conjunct Jupiter. This is also a large placement. And what that does is Neptune is the view to the unknown, okay? And if it's conjunct Jupiter, it expands the view to the unknown. So one of the things when you're looking at the idea of a shaman is you're not going to look for just one specific thing, because everybody's life tells a story, and you look for the pieces of that story in the chart. And when you have these individual pieces that would lean towards depth, would lean towards healing, would lean towards, someone who really wants to give of themselves for the sake of the other. When you have these concepts in the chart, you are building the concept of a shaman. It's not, you're not really looking for, all shaman have this. No.
Yeah. How do you know if your Neptune is conjunct with
Jupiter?
Jupiter, yeah.
Okay, so what you're looking at is a Neptune conjunct Jupiter. In your chart, you're going to have them right together, is what you're going to do. So they're going to be within 10 degrees of each other, is what a conjunction is. So you take that chart, and 10 degrees either way, that's a conjunction. And what that means is that's a total harmony between Jupiter and Neptune is what's happening. So let me look here. All right, so let me look at, pull your chart up here real quick here, Jacob.
Okay.
So you have your Neptune. Let me see. Okay, Jupiter is here. Yeah, your Jupiter is second house. Your Neptune's over in the sixth. It's not conjunct. It's not doing that. I'm trying to see if there's an aspect that's there. It's 0 degrees and 20 degrees. Yeah, that's not. What you have is you have Neptune in your sixth house, that's dealing with the idea of work. Okay, so that means that you're going to bring that element to what your work, which again, that's going to play into that part there, because it's tied very strongly to your work. It's also tied to Venus. All right, it's tied to Vesta, is what it has. Let me see. So your Vesta is tied to Jupiter, but what you're looking at in that way, okay, is you're wanting to see and you're wanting to build the theme of a person. What are their intents? Or what are they intending? What are they supposed to be intending? The other thing you can always look for in a shaman's chart, of course, is the nodes. If you have a north node going in, or either north or south node going into the 8th house, that's going to be another thing that would be very strong towards that. That's what it's wanting to do. Another one that you can have is a lot of strong ties to the 4th house. Okay, so if you have a lot of strong ties to the 4th house, that's something. But it depends on the type of shamanic ministry that a person has. Now, the shaman I was looking at, again, he does ayahuasca, but he's really a teacher. Okay, and his chart is very strong towards teaching. And when you hear him teach about things, about how you deal with this inner life, he is fabulous at it. And he's good with, again, performing the ceremony and leading and guiding and creating space and doing all these things. Very effective. But that's where he goes. He is the teacher shaman. But you can have, all these different variations of shamanic sort of activity, what they do. You can deal with someone who would be a very strong 2nd house, which is about being grounded. Okay, so that also could be aspects. If you had a lot of the healing ties. Okay, so if you have, let's say, Neptune that's going to aspect into the 2nd house, you have Jupiter in the 2nd house. These kind of things can expand that as well. All right. So, because it's wanting to expand your connection to that physical realm, all right, and tie things and bring things together. That's another way. But when you're looking at the concept of a shaman, the bigger things is the concept of service. Is the person living for themselves? So, and I'll give you an example. If I saw someone who was extremely heavy in the first house, okay, let's say sun or a lot of planets in the first house, I seriously doubt this person is called to shamanic work, okay, because they're seeing so much from their own perspective that it's going to be difficult for them to put the needs of the other very high. They're sort of not designed to do that. They're designed to be able to do things in a fearless way and just go forward with their own thought and their own need, and that's the way they're made to be. And so I would not see that as a really strong sort of shaman calling, or really any kind of sort of ministering to people. But if you were to tell me that this person was going to be going to the moon, I'd be like, absolutely. They're designed to be an astronaut. That would be awesome. That would be more their calling. And those that type of person isn't necessarily designed to be in a nurturing, counseling sort of situation and creating and holding space for people to be able to explore themselves or to find healing. It's just not designed that way, So the things you're wanting to look for are strong ties to helping people, to connecting and helping people is really what you're looking for in a chart. And there are many varied ways of doing that. Because there was, again, one in particular that I really wanted to focus on, or that I really stuck, but then I did 3 others. And these are all real shaman, okay? These, for me, are like established people. And they were not the same. The charts are not the same, But you can see where they're the same in the sense that they really have a care and concern for people. That's prominent. And they have a desire for a certain amount of depth. That's prominent. Caring for people, going deep, and they have sort of a natural not all, but a lot of them tended towards the self-sacrifice. That was another aspect that was there. But not all were really in the teaching mode. That was not the case. Some of them were much more hands-on and just doing it than teaching it. Others lean towards the ability to teach and really strong in communication. That was there. Let me look here too. So series is a big one. Like with the shaman, that was again the main one I was looking at he was Ceres conjunct the sun. Okay, so that was something he had. The asteroid Ceres conjunct the sun. That was big. Another one I found that was very fascinating, and I've done a little study on it, but not a tremendous amount, was Lilith. And so when you deal with Black Moon Lilith, and he had Lilith conjunct his Pluto, is what he did. And with Lilith is sort of, it takes its themes or its story from the Jewish tradition of the other wife of Adam. So there's Adam and Eve, and then the first wife being Adam and Lilith. Okay? And Lilith wasn't going to be submitted to a man. That was not happening. So she left, and then the story goes, Eve comes. And so we have this sort of imaginary point called Black Moon Lilith. Like the moon nodes are not planets. They are mathematical equations and points of intersecting. Black Moon Lilith is the same way. It's an intersection point between Earth and Moon and Sun. Okay? And what it deals with is more the deeper psychological healing and the wounds that happen inside. And so when you see Pluto, this evolutionary push for transformation, tied together with deep psychological wounds, inner wounds, that's what he has, which to me is like, oof, yes, that's absolutely in what he's doing. You know, in that shamanic work, going to those deep psychological wounds and wanting to bring those out so they can receive healing. So, again, Black Moon Lilith is, that's, it's strong in his chart, and there seems to definitely be a tie to that. Another one you can look at is called the asteroid Wisdom. Okay, so there's an asteroid called Wisdom, and that happens to be in his chart conjunct his ascendant, which, again, the concept being on your face, you distribute wisdom. That's kind of what you're designed to do, which is interesting. And I see that a lot with teachers, that you will see it conjunct either the sun, Mercury, or their ascendant. And you'll see wisdom. So the asteroid Wisdom will be conjunct these points. Or you could see it in the 10th house as well. That would be another one that would manifest that wisdom in a strong way. Another one he has is, again, Pallas Athena, which is an asteroid as well. And he has it in the 8th house. Okay, so Pallas Athena in the 8th house, what that tends to do, or you could take Pallas Athena in Pisces as well, or Scorpio. But what it's going to do is it's going to have more of a psychic kind of place. So if you're dealing with that intuitive sense, which any 8th house Pluto Scorpio is going to have a strong sort of intuitive sense. That's one thing that he has. And so what it does is it brings about a certain understanding and wisdom of the intuitive. You lean a lot on that intuitive state. And so instead of looking at the idea of logic, instead of looking at the idea of I'm testing and I'm going to try this and see, you're getting a sense of an understanding of something because you've seen it before, or it's an inner knowing that there's something that's here, and you're sort of pushing that one, and that's with the Pallas Athena. So that's a big one there. Those are some of the major aspects. You can get into another path you can go down is Taurus. Okay, so that's another path you can go down, because that's going to strongly link you with nature. Taurus will. That's going to ground you. But you're going to want to see like Neptune placements in Taurus. So the idea of the view to the unknown, but really your feet are on the ground. You're going to want those kind of ideas and those concepts to produce the sort of the drives toward those shamanic ways. Is this making sense for anyone, or any questions at this point?
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying, but I guess you're just starting with the planets at this point, and then you're gonna see. Are you gonna talk more about the signs and the houses?
Well, the signs and the houses, again, it's really hard to deal with the signs and houses without the planets. Okay? Because the sign in the house is very limited in what it's going to do. Because, okay, for example, like I said with the shaman from Peru, if I were to look at his chart and you were to tell me that he was a professor, let's say if you were to tell me, yeah, he's a professor of psychology, I would say, yeah, that makes sense. Okay? It looks like he could be that. But he is a shaman. Why? Because his father was a shaman. Because that is how they do, in a sense, psychology. The shaman is the way that psychology is dealt with, But if he had been raised by a psychology professor, he would be a psychology professor. I have no doubt about it, and he would be fabulous at it. Okay? So I would not be able to distinguish the difference between that. But you can see how the two both run together. Now, as a psychologist, if you told me he just taught, he never did any practice, I would not believe that. He would need to be seeing clients and patients because he has that healing aspect, okay? But he also has the ability to teach it and communicate it extremely well. So that's how I would see that. Now, you're taking that more from the placement of the planets and the asteroids than simply the signs. If I'm wanting to go more on the idea of what signs to look for, I'm looking for Scorpio straight off. I'm looking for strong Scorpio is what I'm looking for. Scorpio 8th house. That's where I would naturally go. But to tell you the truth, his Scorpio 8th house is not very active. Okay? But his Pluto is. And so Pluto rules the 8th house. Pluto rules Scorpio. So that's why you have to kind of like, you can't just take them so simplistically as, oh, I need to have this or this. That's not really true. You need to have that dynamic in your chart. So your placement of Pluto can be important and what it's connected to. If I have Pluto somehow either square, opposition, conjunct, let's say my Mercury, that's going to heavily engage my brain, okay, and my sort of logical way of thinking. Now, if you were to take that same thing and let's bring in Neptune and make it what's called a midpoint. So you have 3 planets. You have Mercury, Pluto, Neptune. I will tell you that is going to shift that way of thought. You could go from a sort of revolutionary way and sort of a challenging way of thinking to now challenging spiritual way of thinking is what you're going to do, okay? Just by adding that 3rd planet in there. That's what that's going to do. It's going to shift it and focus it more, all right, into an expansive, creative, sort of spiritual way, all right?
You were saying that Taurus, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay, go ahead.
Taurus is a shaman in
Yes.
its placement?
Well, Taurus, you can see where Taurus is going to bring in the element of the connection to Earth, okay? That's what it's going to do. So if I were to take, let's say I were to take that, all right? So let's say I were to take those 3 planets and do a midpoint pattern. And let's say my Neptune is in Taurus. That's going to lean it more towards shamanic instead of, let's say, another type of religion, all right? It would lean it more shamanic than, let's say, Christian, because it would want to tie it to Earth and Earth sciences. It would want to tie it to more nature is what it would want to do. But if I remove that, it could easily shift to another spiritual. It was definitely going to be in the spiritual realm. But where in the spiritual realm? How is it going to manifest? And you're going to want to see, again, if you get the Taurus element in there, you're going to plant it on the Earth. But if you go Scorpio, you're going to take it into the depth of the inner psyche is what you're going to do. All right? So Scorpio is going to take it to the depth of the inner psyche, which is not all shamanic work, but a lot of shamanic work goes into the inner depth of the psyche is what it's wanting to do and dig there. So I think the varied manifestations of shamanism is just that. It's quite varied, you know. So it's like, what kind of shaman are you? Because the Peruvian, one that's working with ayahuasca, there are other shamans who don't work with anything like that, you know. So you're going to see the variations in the chart that way.
Personally, I work with sound.
Exactly. Okay, so sound is going to tie in, all right. So sound is going to tie a lot with Mercury. All right. You can get some Neptune in there. Let me see, though. Okay, so you have your Mercury. So your Mercury is heavily conjunct Vesta. All right. It's like they are totally conjunct. And also Venus is conjunct your Vesta. So let me see, on the Mercury side of things, though. So this gives, so Vesta has a natural self-contained element to it, is what it does. And this gives a very strong ability for concentration, is what that's going to do. All right? So that's going to allow the mind to really concentrate a lot. And in Vesta, this is again, that's a feminine quality, is what Vesta is going to do. And then you also have Juno involved in there too, because your Mercury has Mars, it has Vesta. Those are the big connections, is Mars and Vesta. And then you take your Neptune. So your strong thing there is your Neptune in Sagittarius 6th house in retrograde. So your Neptune is retrograde Sagittarius. So where that tells me there is the work that you're involved in is going to be there's an inner element because it's going retrograde, and it has a philosophical sort of bent to it because it's Sagittarius. Okay, so Sagittarius is philosophical. It's ruled by Jupiter. It has this idea of expansion. It wants to connect and expand. Yours is in the expansion of the unknown because it's Venus, or not Venus, it's Neptune. So the view to the unknown. It's the expansion of the unknown, of an inwards type. So it's like it's the unknown that's inward, not the unknown that's outward. Okay? It's the inward unknown that you want to explore and you want to begin to expand in that sort of philosophical, in that looking at the wholeness thing. All right? So that's one element that you would have there that you could see could be a part of a shamanic role. Now, when you take what rules Sagittarius is Jupiter. And your Jupiter is in Leo in the 2nd house, which the 2nd house is Taurus. Okay? So what you're looking at there is it's a grounding in the earth. All right? So it's dealing with the tangible is what it wants to do. And it's in Leo, so it's the unique. It's that which is unique, that which is tied to the earth and the individual. All right? So that's point 2. You have this grounding in the earth. This is square your sun. Okay? This is very strongly square your sun. Your sun being in Taurus, 11th house. Okay? So Taurus, 11th house. 11th house is the idea of working with groups. All right? That's what it wants to do. Plus the fact you have Chiron in the 11th house, the wounded healer, in Taurus. Okay? So here the healer is in the sign of Taurus. The house of Taurus, okay, the 2nd house, has Jupiter in it, which is expanding it. So what you're doing is you're taking the concepts of being strongly earth-based. Your sun, the sense of self, the soul, is very strong earth-based. And it's connected with people in groups, okay? So it's the idea of leading, talking in groups, doing all these things in groups. Plus it has the Chiron there. So there's a wounding in that area where there's healing. So that's the healing that you'd want to bring. And the healing needs to be in a very natural sort of, there's an earth element way to it. It's not simply psychological. You want a practical expression of the healing is what you're going to want. Okay? So you take that combined with the idea that it also involved in your work. So 11th house is an interaction, but the work is Neptune in Sagittarius, 6th house. Okay? So it needs to have that spiritual element. So you're combining a very natural healing. Without that Neptune, you would be, I would say you would go way more towards, you could be helping people work out, or a physical therapist or something like that. Okay, that's where I would see that. That easily could go to physical therapy. I would not have a problem with that at all. But see, what the Neptune's doing is it wants to have a spiritual element to it. It wants to have a deep inward element to it. Okay? And that's where I think it goes into more the shamanic. That's where your natural bent is going to be more towards that shamanic way, because that's what it's doing. It's combining the earth, the healing powers of earth, into a spiritual sort of practice is what it's doing. And so what you're doing is you're fulfilling the needs of your Neptune, you're fulfilling the needs of your Sun, you're fulfilling the needs of Chiron, you're fulfilling the needs of Jupiter, and you're fulfilling the needs of your Mercury in Vesta, okay? So you end up fulfilling the needs of these different energies within you through this particular practice is how I would read that, okay?
We have a question.
Yes.
Let me see if I try to do this. Oops. Are you on? Hold on a second.
Now I'm on.
There you go.
Here I am. So great insights there, Christopher. I'm hoping that you might be able to shed some for me also, as I'm aware you have my chart also.
Okay, let me look. All right. Okay.
Whoops. That was weird. Hello? Oh. I'm still getting used to this. Sorry, guys.
No problem.
Are you ready, David?
I hope so, Christopher.
Okay.
I'm sitting down.
Okay. So, you know how we talked a lot about the 8th house. So you have Neptune in the 8th house is what you have. So you have Neptune in the 8th house, Libra. And so what that ends up doing is this is the view to the unknown in a transformational house. All right? So it wants to it wants to dive into this idea of the unknown. It is not it wants to go like head first into it. But you also have Saturn, conjunct Saturn. So it can't dive into something that is just all just hippy-dippy, nothing's really based on anything. It's like, oh, whatever you feel, you feel. No. There has to be an element of reality for you. Like there has to be a truth. There has to be a real. This can't be just, I'm going to make this thing up, and, you just got to kind of force yourself to see it. Okay, no. There's got to be a reality, because wherever Saturn goes, there's a certain commitment to truth. All right, so here you have the idea of the view to the unknown married to commitment to truth, in the house of depth. All right, so this can be quite a little irritant in reality, because it doesn't let you just skate by or, oh yeah, that's good enough. If you don't really understand it, or if this isn't making sense, it doesn't let you let go of it, It wants you to dig down and find out the reality of what you may be seeing or what you may be experiencing. It's not wanting to, again, just allow it to be okay, because there's the idea of our dreams and our ideals and all these things. These become very serious to us. It's not just a whimsical thing. It's sort of like your imagination, your spiritual realities that you see. These are not nothing, These are important for you to explore, is what they become, That's really big. Plus the fact that your Saturn is in looks like a trine to your Pluto, okay? So you have both Neptune and Saturn in a sextile. You have a sextile relationship with Pluto, which is activating that whole evolutionary push. Okay? So these aspects here, again, Pluto, Neptune, that's what we had talked about before. Very shamanic. Okay? Because that's a strong depth exploration. And you have the 8th house. So you have a lot more of the natural sort of shamanic placement. That's what I would say.
Right.
Because you're hitting all the ones I already talked about.
Right.
And I hadn't seen your chart on looking at it as far as shaman, but that's what it is. It leans that way. Plus the fact that your Chiron is in the 12th house. Oh my Lord. And your North Node. Oh my God. Okay. So, with Chiron in your North Node, or Chiron and your North Node all in the 12th house, this is the house, this is Pisces. This is the house of the non-ego, sort of the egoless connection of all, the sea of all eternity and all life itself. And you have, your evolutionary goal is towards that, is to move towards this idea of the collective, of a state of the non-individual connection to sort of everything is what it is. But with Chiron there, it's wanting a certain structure. It's especially so you have your Chiron in Capricorn. So it wants a structure of the structureless.
Okay.
Okay. You feel any?
My natural bent to want to see all the details actualized.
Absolutely. So, okay, and yet it's also telling you the actualization is the nothing and the all indifferent. It's not differentiated, and that is its naturalness. And yet we live in a very physical world that is all about order and everything goes in a certain way. And yet the spiritual world is not that way. It's isness, and it's like, okay, it just is. This is the idea of the wounding, okay? Like, this is not an easy concept to wrap your head around. This is a challenge, of how do I deal with that? How do I deal with accepting what is and not trying to bring order to it when everything in me says order needs to be brought? And yet, can I accept the fact that there is order in the seemingly orderliness, the absence of order, there's order, because that's what life is. Even though I can't see the order, it is. And it's almost asking you to move up into the realm of what true faith is, because you have to believe it without seeing it. And yet, you have a propensity to need to see it. But you have to almost see it with spiritual eyes and not natural eyes,
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well, maybe that's why I've been closing my eyes more just recently, and I'm just finding peace in my eyes closed, and it's always felt conspicuous, especially in public, and it's just in the past few days, and I can see it tying itself to this call. Makes good sense. You're
so dedicated to the spiritual cause and pursuit. There's an element of being because you have Vesta right there in the 12th house as well. So it's very dedicated to that. And yet you have this idea of needing to know the truth, and it's like in almost like a tangible type way. And yet, faith is real faith. And what I mean by real faith is there are those that have fake faith. It's like, I'm going to just say this and I'm going to believe it. Well, that's wishful thinking, okay? It's different when there's a knowing, but it's a knowing and accepting the limitation of my brain to comprehend, but still believe it, you know? Like, okay, I'm not going to be able to comprehend that really, but I know there is something there, and I'm going to rest in it, and I'm going to have a hope and a faith in it and a trust in it, even though I really don't like understand. But there's a deeper knowing that's there, and I'm going to live as though that is. But it's something that you can't give somebody. It's something somebody has to do within their own being, you know. And that's where I kind of see that's what I see happening in your chart there, is that way, you know. And then if I look at, let me see. Okay, so if I look at your transits right now, see, you have Mars conjunct your Pluto, okay? So your Pluto is also tied into all these other things. And Pluto is then in your 12th house. So Pluto is transiting your 12th house, okay? Well, that's a biggie. And you have Mars transiting your natal Pluto. So you have Pluto transiting the 12th house, and actually, oh my God, is that like right on top of Chiron? Wait a minute. Okay. Bingo. That's what's happening. You have Pluto right on top of your Chiron. Wow. Like, it is right now directly on top. Directly on top. And what that is doing. So Chiron, right now Pluto's at 21 degrees, 23 minutes Capricorn. That's where Pluto is. Your Chiron is 21 degrees, 1 minute. So it is right on, exact. You have a mammoth amount of pressure on that wounded state. Okay, it's like it's our 1 weak point there that we want to really sort of have healing from. So that it is taking you through that like massively, and because your Chiron is in Capricorn, Capricorn is all about structures. That's what it is, but it's in the house of the structureless. It's in the 12th house, Pisces, which is the idea of non-individuated, non-ego, non-separated. Everything's together as one, okay? And yet Capricorn's about bridging and bringing things together, you know? It's about how you build the structures of life. And it's like, what the hell is it doing in the 12th house? You know, it's like, wait a minute. Why am I trying to understand the structures of the structureless? Okay?
Makes
and now
sense
you
to
have
me.
Pluto, the biggest evolutionary push, which doesn't move fast, it moves slow. So it's like this issue that you're like, what the hell? How can I figure that one out? Okay? Now it's pushing you and saying, okay, what's the answer? What's the answer? You know, and you're like, I don't know what. Okay? Does this make sense? I mean, that's a major pressure. Like, that's a major pressure.
Well, I've got to tell you, I don't feel any pressure.
You got it on you.
Maybe it's so heavy that I can't, that I've been crushed and I'm not even aware of it. I don't know.
Well, what it does is it can tend to, because the 12th house can be a house of like you feel a little lost, you know? Like I'm a little lost. Yeah. That's what it does.
Okay.
Because when we're undifferentiated, it doesn't matter whether we go left or right. It doesn't matter whether we go up or down. And we're like, okay, so every option is out there? Which one do I choose? No. That's not the way it works.
Oh, really? It's worked for me for a long time. Well enough.
Absolutely. But now you got Pluto like right on it. And so it's trying to like almost change the whole concept. It wants to evolve. It wants to evolve the idea of, how would I say this? You know when they talk about being in the moment?
Yep.
I think that's almost what it leads to. A long state of literally being in the moment and not planning.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Planning is really hard for me.
I'm a planner.
You are a planner.
I plan all the time.
Yes.
And but also, generally, I am able to go with the moment. But I spend a lot of time planning and imagining.
You're a second house. Okay, you're a second house Taurus sun. Okay.
Yeah.
What that is this is someone who security is going to be an issue. Making sure I have this here and that needs to be there and this needs to be there. This needs to be in the account. That has to be this. Okay. It has a strong practicality. It's got a good gut level. It tends to trust its instincts. You know, you don't want to push it. You want to let it take its time, let it think things through, let it feel good about it, but it needs to sort of assess. It's going to go assess. I've got this, I've got that. It's like a checklist. Okay, there's that in savings. There's that in checking. I've got this paid. I've got that done. I'm going to have this coming up. Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not exactly being in the moment.
Well, but I think I've always had this underlying sense of everything is perfect as it is right now.
Yes.
I have that faith and that trust.
Yes. But it's really it's massively being triggered right now. And I would need to look a little bit more, I would need to go into a little more depth on your Chiron and everything. But as far as a shamanic kind of pattern, you definitely have a strong tie to the shamanic. I mean, with your Pluto, with your Neptune, your Saturn, all that gives a very strong tie to the shamanic. And I would imagine there's an appeal, there can be an appeal that way, to those type of practices. And the fact that you're a Taurus. I mean, so you've got a lot of features to being connected to nature, being connected to those kind of traditions. That would make sense,
It's just how it would work with the rest of me the easiest, or
it's just the idea of whether a person was wanting to practice shamanism, and because I'm not seeing the idea of necessarily teaching it. Although you can communicate it because you have Mars and Jupiter in the third house, that can happen. It's the idea of being open to it and willing to receive it and participate in that type of work. Being around shamans would be very comfortable for you, very natural. You resonate with that energy. Is what you do.
But not the teaching necessarily.
Not necessarily, no. I don't see a big pull for that, because you would want to see a little more tied into maybe the 10th or even the 8th house. Like if your sun was in the 8th house, that would be a little different instead of your sun being in the 2nd house. Okay? Yeah. If the sun flipped over to the 8th, okay, that would be a little different story. But you have that strong, feet on the ground kind of aspect, and yet you really want to dig deep. You're not built to be just shallow. You're not built to be okay with just having enough in the bank account, enough here, enough. That's not enough for you. You're wanting an inner psyche sort of depth is what you would want. That would be important to you too, to have deeper understanding of things. So that would be there.
We should talk again more soon.
Yes, I know. I need to go over your stuff and get with you anyways. So things are starting to slow down a little bit now, where I can find a time for you and everything. So
well, I'm ready.
Okay, all right.
I appreciate it very much.
I'll touch base with you later on this week then. See what we can do.
Okay, great. Thanks, Christopher.
You bet.
Let me ask Scott and see if he's has any information or question.
Sure.
Scott, you there?
Yeah, hey, I'm here.
Did you want to ask anything, or?
Yeah, well, actually, Christopher, this isn't about my chart, but I'm looking at my son's chart.
Okay.
And he's got a pretty active 8th house.
Okay. What's in it?
What's in it? Well, he's got Jupiter in Scorpio.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Yeah, Pluto is in Libra, and Saturn is also in Libra.
Oh, he has got a massive 8th house. Massive 8th house. Yeah. This is not this has a lot of intensity in him. A lot of very deep, it can even be quiet thought, but it goes deep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Very deep. I mean, how old is he?
37.
Okay. So he's just beginning into some of the early midlife transits is what he's doing at 37.
Right.
So 36 begins some of them, but you go really 37 to about 42 is when you're hitting all these major like transits that are wanting to challenge you to individuate more, to really truly be yourself. And he could experience a lot of like inner turmoil as far as, so one of the big things that he is sort of drawn towards is the idea of the transformation, the idea of the phoenix, and transformation is not easy, because you're taking and it's sort of a ripping down of oneself to be reborn is what it is, because you want the truth, you want the reality and the truth. And in our world today, we're so much about sort of surface level things, how things look instead of how things actually are,
Right.
And a lot of times things are all judged. Well, if it looks good, then it is good. Well, no, not for him, like at all, not at all, because he would have a massive a BS detector, and anyone just wanting to talk about the weather is not going to interest him at all. There's very strong depth. And so with Pluto in the 8th house, what it's doing is, he's very Plutonian then, extremely strong Plutonian. And now does he do any practices as far as in the spiritual realm and anything? Does he do any practices that way?
He doesn't, but he will be. He's moving in with us next week.
Okay.
And with mine and Donna's bent, it's definitely a hole that he's been missing. He's shown some interest in the past, but he hasn't really explored it, and which is something we're going to try to get him open up to.
Okay,
and
good.
I actually like you to do a reading for him here in the next few weeks or a month.
Okay. Yeah. He's he's intense. I mean, when you've got Saturn and you've got Pluto and Jupiter, oh my Lord,
he is
that's.
He's a Taurus, and he's got his son.
He's in the 2nd house?
Very early Taurus. It's in the 2nd house.
Yeah. Okay.
And his Mercury is also in the 2nd house, also in Taurus, along with his Chiron, which is in the 3rd. And they're pretty much in opposition.
Oh boy. So is he a Pisces ascendant or an Aries ascendant?
He is actually an Aquarian ascendant.
Oh, Aquarian ascendant. Oh my Lord. Right. Oh my Lord. Oof.
Yeah,
and he's got Chiron in the 3rd house?
Chiron is in the 3rd house.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
Communication is really tough for him.
Oh, it's very tough, yeah. And he could basically say screw you too to it,
Oh, he's got no problem with that. Yeah.
Yep. Well, with that Aquarian ascendant, that's kind of a, that's sort of flipping everybody off there, like, you don't like me, then fine, whatever. And being able to communicate that, but he really wants to go into a real depth and truth, and a reality. But for people to understand that is really not easy. They're just they're not going to react well to it, I would imagine. And then he's not going to react well.
No.
Yeah. So you can kind of see that sort of dynamic when in his mind, he just wants a certain reality and truth, and he wants everybody to respect him and he'll respect them and all this kind of thing is kind of where he's going, but it's probably not being communicated. That's why the Chiron in the third, it's like people are misunderstanding him all the time and probably then judging him incorrectly, which makes him respond, and then they feel justified in their judgment,
Right. It's self-fulfilling prophecy in their mind.
Yes. It creates this dynamic there, which wants to send him further and further away from people, and just, not want to have to deal with them, which pushes away the idea of going to the truth and depth, but he still feels compelled to go there. And like, how is he doing that then? That can get very frustrating. I would imagine there's some anger issues there. On all that. Now, the Aquarian is not the one to manifest but when it blows, and with all that Scorpio, and in the 8th house and Pluto, oof, that's got to build,
Yeah. Yeah, it's not really outward, and you can tell
he's got to blow sometimes.
Yeah, but when it blows, it's
Mount Vesuvius. Yeah, absolutely. You can just see all that in the dynamics, and you just there needs to be. Oh, and he's coming just like right into the midlife things. Ooh, so these are like going to be being hit, is what's going to happen over the next 5-6 years. He's going to be like boom, 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 boom. Okay. That's intense. So, and what is he doing as far as work right now and all that?
Well, he's moving down here from Seattle.
Oh, okay. He's moving down from Seattle. Oh, okay.
Right.
All right. Okay,
so
good.
So he's coming down to be with family for the next, get back on his feet and hopefully get him readjusted, get him healthy.
Yeah. Has he been married or no? Or
no, he hasn't been married at all.
Okay.
No.
All right. Where's his Venus?
His Venus is actually, it's in the 1st house in Pisces.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Which is in opposition to his Saturn.
Yeah. So he wants true love. That's a true love, but it's almost like a divine type love. It's very.
Yeah, it's not superficial, right?
Yeah. No, it's like a true divine love. Is there? And so, what's his 4th house like? Anything in the 4th house?
No, 4th house is in Gemini. It's nothing there.
No planets there. Okay.
No planets there.
Okay.
His midheaven is Uranus in Sagittarius.
Does he have anything in the 11th house either? No.
No, nothing in the 11th.
Where's his moon?
That's Capricorn. His moon is in 2nd house in Aries.
Okay. Yeah, he's got some dynamics going on. Some intense dynamics. Yeah. Okay. There needs to be some good breakthroughs there. So he can get there's almost, the need to get reoriented to himself, and really embrace himself, because, Pisces Venus is like that's the highest placement for Venus, You know, the concept there is this is really the love of humanity, the love of all is what it is. So it's a very strong, that divine love, that agape love, you know, is there. But I mean, the moon wants that sort of excitement and wants that sort of the thrill. You know, his sun is very set on, you know, sort of that to be safe and comfort and, you know, enjoy, you know, the good aspects of life and everything. And yet he's got all those things to evolve and to get into the deeper sense of the way things are. You know, it's almost like a monastery would be like the kind of thing that could be really good. You know, I mean, you can almost see that some of that would like really work, where, you know, he could really spend some time with himself and go into those deeper things. It's interesting, and just discover that big love that he has inside of himself, you know, and that's what it really is almost going to entail, is beginning to touch that and deal with the reality of that. Not in a like hokey positive way, you know, like just being all cheerful, but in a real way, you know, like getting to the reality of things and finding that, yeah, there is love even in the reality of things, you know, that's really deep. But a person has to sort through all that and find that out for themselves and really touch and discover that. And so, I mean, obviously, you know, in talking about the whole shamanic role, I mean, that kind of path. So going down to where you guys are there in Tucson is going to be great. You know, I think that'll be a little better than, I mean, I have to look at the chart on him, how he does in Tucson, but I would imagine that would be better, just because of the area, you know?
Yeah.
I think the Seattle area has gotten so, it's sort of taken spirituality into a more of a political realm, where I think Tucson is still, you know, you're still more connected to a little bit more of the nature there, and, you know, just the energy and the energy patterns there are a little more conducive towards that. So, interesting.
Yep, I'd agree.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have to wrap it up here.
All right.
Running out of time. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. And
yeah,
David,
thank you, Jay.
you're welcome. Thanks for showing up. And if you guys want to reach Christopher, you can email him at Christopher. You know your
just pritimastrology@gmail.com.
pritimastrology@gmail.com.
Yeah.
I think I put it up on the Facebook.
I think you did.
Yeah, the event, so you can always revert to that. And I'll post this on Universal Heart is the name of the group. I'm going to send me a request.
Awesome.
All right. We'll go from there, but I appreciate it, and have a good day, guys.
Good deal.
Thanks again, Christopher, for your time.
All right. Thanks, Jacob. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Christopher.
You bet.
Thank you, Jacob. This was good.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, bud.
All right. Talk to y'all later.
Have a good day.
All right. Bye-bye.
See ya.